Well, we're happy to have Coach Chizik with us today. And, Coach, I guess you know you're in SEC country. And we're going to hear a little bit from you about your background. But I don't know if you heard about the SEC fans. They're loyal fans.
Really? Yeah, I
they
wasn't really
are.
aware.
They are. And they were going up the mountain. There was a Arkansas, an Ole Miss, a Tennessee, and an Auburn, and an Alabama fan. They were going up the mountain, and they were arguing who was the most loyal fan. And, of course, the Arkansas guy spoke up first. He says, "I'm the most loyal fan, woo pig suey," and he takes off running. He jumps off the mountain. So the Ole Miss fan looks at it and goes, hotty toddy, I'm the most loyal. He takes off, runs up, jumps off the mountain. Well, the Tennessee fan, he's getting nervous, but he looks and says, well, I'm the most loyal fan. Go Vols, takes off, runs, jumps off the mountain. And then the Alabama fan, well, he's not going to be outdone. They're going to win, right? So he says, roll tide, and he pushes the Auburn fan off the mountain. So,
that's probably accurate. Right?
That's right. So welcome to SEC country. We're glad to have you. Coach, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, about your family, and kind of how you got into coaching.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, before I even do that, Drew, if you don't mind, boy, I got a high level of respect for you guys that came and spent your weekend really trying to grow. That's awesome. And I'm extremely excited that you guys asked me to be a part of this, and I hope today, I can give you guys something to think about. Tony Evans, was he not unbelievable? Let's give that dude a hand, man. That was as good as I've heard, and I've heard a lot of good ones. But as far as my background goes, I was born and raised in a family of 6. I was the youngest of 4 siblings. I have 3 sisters, so I was the young guy. And my mother and father, really just a phenomenal upbringing. My dad was a World War II Marine. You talk about, we talked a little bit last night that, guys, a lot of you, including myself, and we've all, over the years and some now say, what is our purpose? And, this story about my father, I did not know. My father passed away in 2002. And he was a World War II Marine in Okinawa. And if you guys know any of the history of World War II, Okinawa was probably the most bloodiest battles of the Pacific that there were. But my father, who died at 80, never talked to me about it. It's just something he didn't talk about. And he fought for 4 years. My dad was on a football scholarship playing football when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And 2 months later, he enlisted into the Marines. And at that time, if you were in college, you were going to be one of the last ones drafted. And he went and he enlisted in the Marines. Well, he fought for 4 years and never talked to me about it. And he was literally on his deathbed with me, and his best friend was by his side. And his best friend went through the World War II with him. And my dad was unconscious, and he couldn't speak. And unbeknownst to us, he only had 2 days left. But I remember walking out of the hospital because my father's best friend looked at my dad, knowing that he couldn't hear really, and he said, well, Chizik, you lived 53 years more than you should have. and I heard that, but I didn't know what he meant. So I walked out and I said, Bill, what did you mean when you said that? And he said, did your dad ever tell you about Sugarloaf Hill? I said, no, I don't know what that is. He goes, go research it. And I went and researched Sugarloaf Hill. And the Cliff Notes version is this. It was a hill that the Marines had to take on an island in Okinawa to secure the island. And it was a slaughterhouse. And what they didn't know is that the Japanese were dug in so deep in those tunnels, and as the Marines kept going up there, by the hundreds, they were getting slaughtered and they couldn't take the hill. After about 6,000 Marines were lost, my dad went up with a company of 142, and only 13 came back. And he was one of the 13. And when I heard that story and I read that, and I went back to him, I said, I've never heard that. He said, yes, son. He said, make sure you know you got a purpose. So I'm not here by accident. I'm not here today by accident. And I want to tell you that to lead this off, because that's kind of who I've been and kind of what I've grown up around. And my dad was one of the most phenomenal human beings that I've ever been around. My mom was as solid as a rock. But we grew up in a family that was a Christian home. I grew up Catholic, which was a good upbringing. There's no question. And, you know, I went through college and went through high school and, you know, played football. And years later, I met the woman of my dreams. 23 years later, we're still married and have 3 beautiful kids. Believe it or not, I married my high school coach's daughter. Now, how many of you would do that? All right, not many, right? But married my high school coach's daughter. We've been married 23 years. I got 3, I'm so blessed. They're healthy children. I got twin daughters. They're juniors at Auburn. My son is a senior in high school. He's getting ready to finish his last baseball season. He's a football player, baseball player. And they're all healthy. And I couldn't be more blessed to be part of the family and try to lead the family best I can.
Now, is it public knowledge yet about your son signing? Is that?
Well, it will be on Wednesday. So,
okay.
Right. My son's actually going to sign next Wednesday to play college ball. So I'm really excited and blessed he's going to get an opportunity to do that too. And I've been home to see it happen.
So you've been coaching for some time. How'd you get into coaching?
You know, it was really interesting. When I got done with college, I was really kind of wavering. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Ran into one of my old high school football coaches at a wedding, and he had just got a head coaching job at a 5A school in Florida. I was 22, 23 years old, and you know, he talked to me about coming on staff with him, and I took the job. And, you know, I wasn't one of these guys that said, man, when I get done playing, man, I know I want to coach. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But within probably 2 to 3 weeks of me being on the job, I knew this was my calling. I knew this was what I needed to be doing. And I got in as a high school coach. And I worked my way up. I was a high school coach for 2.5 years. And then got into college with Danny Ford at Clemson back in the day, way back in the late 80s. Really blessed that Coach Ford offered me a job. And then my career just kind of kept going from there, and I've been all around the country. Spent 2 years here in the great state of Tennessee at Middle Tennessee State, back in the early 90s with a guy named Boots Donley. And we had a great run there at Middle, and recruited Memphis a good bit and this whole area. And then just kind of went on what the college coaches do, Drew. They just, you move around, you try to be blessed to be around really good guys. I was around really great guys that I felt like were great mentors and guys that I could learn from. And, every step was a step up. I was one of these guys that was blessed for 28 years. I was never part of, any staffs that got let go. Every step that I took the next step was a positive step for me. And, which is rare. It's a gypsy business. I mean, college coaching and NFL coaching is a gypsy world. You move around. If you're there 2 or 3 years, it's only gotten worse because the money's gotten so incredible that, the toleration for, 8-win seasons isn't even, a thing anymore. So, but I've been very blessed.
Well, we all know about your journey at Auburn. And not only as a head coach, but you were an assistant coach there also. One of the unique things I read about you is that not only did you win the Broyles Award for the best assistant coach at Auburn, but you also were Coach of the Year in that 2010 year. And having coached there at Auburn for 4 seasons as the head coach, anytime you start talking about Auburn football, there's always something that kind of pops into our mind. And we all know that when you're talking Auburn football, there's always an elephant in the room. And we just know that's part of it. And
That used to be my problem. That's Gus's problem now.
Well, you know, Coach, the Iron Bowl is probably the greatest college rivalry that there is. And right now, you know, at this time, Alabama has won 46, Auburn has won 36, and there's been one tie. And but you coached in several of those, but the most memorable one was in the year 2000. You know, Auburn and Alabama do not like each other.
That would be very conservative, but yes.
You know, I saw this T-shirt the other day, and I kind of wanted to show it to the men, but just to show you how. Oh. Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag. Brother Steve is an Alabama fan, but
yeah, I would have never guessed.
But you know, Auburn and Alabama people just don't like. But can we put the T-shirt up on the screen? I wanted to show the guys what that T-shirt says. Make Alabama great again, build a wall. So, so we know there's not a lot of love there. But let's go back to 2010, and I'm sure that our elephant will want to hear this. 2010, you're down 24-0 with 5 minutes and change to go in the first half at Alabama. Take us down the journey of about kind of what that game, what all happened that day.
Yeah, well, it unfolded just like we wanted it to. We felt it was more painful this way, right? No, it was unbelievable. We went into the game undefeated, and you know, to be honest with you, you know, complacency kills, to be honest with you, and that was what you would consider to be a down year for Alabama in terms of big picture, simply just because they had lost a game. That doesn't happen very often, right? And but you know, we went into the game. We were very confident, and we loved the game plan. And you know, sometimes in these games, you know, game plans don't necessarily unfold just like you script them, right? And I'll be honest with you guys, we looked up, and the first touchdown, we go down 7-0, no big deal. And you got to remember, in that year, we had come back probably 3 or 4 different times. And, you know, we were down 17-0 to Clemson, game 3 of the year in that season. Came back and beat them in overtime. We had to do it a couple other times before we got to the Iron Bowl. But this is a different deal. There's a lot on the line for us.
There's 101,821 at that game.
Right. That's what you get when you go to Tuscaloosa. Right.
That's right.
And
2 Auburn fans. And
that's right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Charles Barkley and one other, probably.
Okay.
But anyway, you know, we went down 24-0, and you know, the first touchdown 7-0, next one was 14-0, and I'm still okay. It started to get to 21, and I'm not really feeling great about what's going on. And then it got to be 24, and you asked me, you know, I get asked that question all the time. How did you feel when it was 24-0? I'm like, well, how would you feel when it's 24-0? So, because that's how I felt. And so, you know, a unique play in that game, and people won't remember, but Alabama had the ball. We were down 24-0. They threw a slip screen to Mark Ingram, and he was literally getting ready to walk it into the end zone to make it 31. And I remember our defensive end runs about 60 yards down the field. He gets behind him. He pops the ball out from behind as Mark Ingram is getting ready to run into the end zone. The ball goes into the end zone and out of the end zone, and it becomes our ball. And that's where God revealed his face. Because if it would have got to 31, I'm not sure that I would have, you know, we would have been able to overcome that. But, you know, little things in the game that people won't remember, I remember that as the true turning point in the game. We didn't score a point off it. We just simply got the ball back, and they didn't score. And so luckily we were able to score 7 right before the half, make it 24-7. We went into the locker room, and I'll never forget, Cam had some choice words. I had some choice words, but we were getting the ball back in the second half, and I said, guys, we're going to take this ball down and score on the very first series, make it a 10-point game, 24-14, and this thing is on. And I kind of walk away going, at least I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. But I said it with confidence, and they believed it. And so we come out, and I think play 3, we scored a long touchdown to Terrell Zachary. The score was 24-14, and our guys started believing. You talk about a team and just young men when things happen. And this is really a parallel to life, too. Things start happening in your life, you start believing like, hey, this could happen. Like, this is a reality. This is real. And, you know, then obviously we were able to kind of come back and gain some momentum and you know, ended up winning the game 28-27. That was huge for us to be able to catapult ourselves into the national championship, because if you remember when we played Oregon, that was a walk-off field goal to win that too. Yeah. So we're kind of used to, you know, winning and winning sometimes in that fashion.
So 28-27, Alabama falls, and they call it the comeback game because you came back, and you know this might be a good time for the elephant to leave the room because we're getting ready to talk about the national championship. So let's say goodbye to the elephant. Congratulate Alabama for coming in second this year. Okay, all right. Coach, you know, every man out here, you know, you've been blessed to be a part of 2 national championship teams. The first one was at Texas. But I tell you what, let's just kind of step back and remember here for a minute, and then we'll talk about this. Watch this.
They have no timeouts to work with. 8 seconds is not very much. Leidig runs away from the pressure. Now he's got to throw it, and throws it high and out of bounds, and the game is over. Texas has defeated Southern California 41-38 to win the national championship of college football.
Wins the BCS National Championship.
Isn't that awesome?
Fond memories, fond memories.
Coach, share a little bit about those experiences. Just, man, what's that like?
You know, it's really, I'd probably cheapen it trying to describe it. You know, the feeling, you know, the first national championship I was a part of, I was just so happy for Mac Brown. And, you know, I remember so distinctly, I was exhausted because the year before I was at Auburn, we were 13-0 in 2004, and we didn't get a chance to play for the national championship, and we truly felt like, in our heart of hearts, we were the best team out there. We truly felt that, and we didn't get a chance to play for it. The next year, I go to Texas, and we go 13-0 again, and that was a culmination that you saw. And I remember driving out of the Rose Bowl Stadium. It's my wife next to me. I'm exhausted. I remember looking back, and I remember and you guys have seen it probably on TV, the Rose Bowl, the rose on the bowl, and it was lit up, and it was dark. Everything was dark except that rose, it was lit up. And I remember looking at it going, Lord, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I mean, and I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I really want to remember what this looks like because I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to do this again. What people don't understand is how hard it is to get to that game. And the second thing they don't understand is when you get there, how difficult it is to win it. And Alabama fans are the anomaly because they've been able to enjoy something that it does not happen ever. And that is people literally almost on an annual basis getting a chance to play in that game. That is an anomaly because it is so hard to get to that. And it's so hard to win it if you get there. And then, you know, as God would have it, it was nothing to do with us. It's the favor that He's had on me and my family and the people that I've really associated with. 5 years later, I was back able to do it as a head coach. And, you know, being able to experience as a defensive, I was the actual assistant head coach and defensive coordinator at the time. But it's different when you're a head coach. I remember when Wes made that kick. I remember walking off going, this is such a God thing. It's a fairy tale, you know, and in a lot of ways, it's even hard to comprehend it.
Yeah, I heard you talk about one time about the dynamics of that, what a great team that was. Tell us a little bit about that 2010 team.
The 2010 team was very unique because we didn't have a bunch of draft picks on the team. We had the best offensive player in the country. We had the best defensive player in the country. And we had the rest, and we're just good college guys. We had one seventh-round draft pick other than the first-round draft pick on offense and first-round draft pick on defense. And it was so awesome to be around those guys because they bought into a vision. They bought into the word team. And as the season unfolded and we started winning unconventionally, down 17-0 to Clemson, coming back and win. Down in 14-0 to South Carolina, coming back and winning. Having a walk-off field goal on the road against Kentucky and winning, it really solidified and bonded us as a team. But it was one of the funnest teams I've been around. There was no egos. There was no me, me, me. It was selfless and not selfish. And nobody cared who got the credit. Everybody just went out and played, and it was why we were what we were.
It was definitely a magical run. You know, I know you see coaching as a ministry. I heard you say that earlier. Tell us a little bit about the opportunities that you have to minister in the college world when you were coaching.
Well, I think that's probably, you know, I work for ESPN now, and if there's anything that I miss, it is the ministry part of being, you know, Dr. Evans just talked about it. I talked about it a little bit last night. I see what's missing in these guys when they come to play for you. And it's a microcosm, you know, it's a smaller version of what the world is. I mean, these guys come from every sort of scenario that you can draw up or imagine in your mind, and being able to have the influence to show them, you know, a lot of them don't know what great looks like, meaning they don't even know what good looks like, meaning, you know, being a good father or a great husband, a great father, they don't know what it looks like. And you have an opportunity to impart that on these young guys. And that was a huge part of what I felt like my wife and I both felt like what we brought to the table. And, you know, I always said coaching is what I do. It's not who I am. Well, what we mean by that is the X's and O's part, you know, the things that it definitely requires you to be good at to be successful. It matters. But there's a bigger picture out there. And if there's anything I miss about not coaching now, it's the ministry part and trying to, and being able to have influence and impart on those young guys, you know, the way we did the 30 years we were doing it.
Well, you know, this is SEC country, so we don't really keep up with the ACC that much. But a lot of these guys might not know the last 2 years. You spent 2 years, 2 years ago, you were the defensive coordinator at North Carolina. You had great success there. But then you made a decision to step away. Can you tell our guys why you stepped away the last couple of years?
So, guys, I was at North Carolina, and I'll never forget, it was a definitive, defining moment. It was in my second year there. The year before, we won the ACC Coastal Division Championship, and played Clemson in the ACC Championship game. They hadn't done that in 25. Well, they hadn't done it ever. But we won 11 games. They hadn't done that in 20-something years. Now we're into our second year, and I'm walking out to two-a-days. And my family did not move there with me, so we did a commute thing because I didn't want to uproot my children because they were seniors in high school. My daughters were getting ready to go off to college. And I'll never forget walking out to practice. And it was the day where everyone at the University of North Carolina was moving into the dorms. So we were at the end of two-a-days, and I'm seeing these young ladies and young men and their parents packing and unpacking their cars, moving them into the dorm. And it hit me. My daughters were going to be moving into their dorm 3 days later at Auburn. and I was not going to be there. And it hit me. And I'm like, this is not okay. This is not okay. And then I'm sitting there thinking, okay, my son now has played 2 years of football and baseball. I've seen 2 football games and 2 baseball games in 2 years. And I'm telling you, I was jacked up at practice that day now. I was jacked up, man. My mind was messed up, and I was like, I'm not sure that I can look back on this and justify this in my world when I know the importance of being a father and a husband is my number one importance in this world on this earth. And I couldn't do it. And so I knew in my spirit before we ever played our first game that would be my last season. And we played Stanford in the bowl game. And Larry Fedora, who is a great friend of mine, which is the main reason I was there, I went and told Larry, I said, Larry, man, I said, I got to drop the anchor on this, man. I got to put my money where my mouth is. I've always said that my family and my children are the most important thing to me on this earth, and I got to live it now. And I said, right now, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I love football. It's been a part of my life forever. I said, but sometimes you got to make decisions that aren't necessarily, you know, what the outside world would expect, or even you got to give up things you love.
You were telling me how many games you've been a part of the last couple of years with your son. What?
Yeah, it's been amazing. So my son's played 26 high school football games. I've seen every game he's played in 2 years. He's getting ready to sign a scholarship next Wednesday. I saw 40-something baseball games last year. They won the 7A state championship in Alabama. They're getting ready to play another season this season, and I will say this, I have no regrets.
That's a great decision on your part. Well, Coach, I know we've talked a lot about football and family, and let's take these last few minutes, and if you'll just kind of share a little bit about your spiritual journey and maybe coach these guys up a little bit. Just talk about your journey.
I'd love to do that. You know, guys, one thing that I would say for me personally in my journey, I mentioned it, I grew up Catholic. And I understood that there was a presence of God that was in your life. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't have the relationship. That's what I was missing. You know, what I found out as I got older through, you know, being around the right men, there's about 6 or 7 men in my life, through the game of football, other than my father, that really changed my perspective on Christianity, being a man, what a man was. And I can tell you right now, don't think that I'm sitting up here with a halo around my head. You know, people look at coaches and you know, they see you on TV and all these things. I got the same problems you got. Your problems are no different than my problems. I got the same exact thoughts. I got the same exact issues. But what I found was through the difficulties and trials and tribulations of trying to raise a family, be a coach, climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, right? We all want to do that because what happens? Everybody equates your success, right? You know, and what you accomplish with being a successful dude. So everybody wants to work hard and climb to the top and all that. But what I realized was, you know, the success is and comes from who you are and what God, you know, puts in you to be, and you trying to live that out. And we all stumble and fall. And, you know, I've disappointed God so many times, and He's still there. I mean, He doesn't walk out on me. And I can tell you right now, the successes that I've had and the failures that I have, which have been a blessing in my life both. People ask me, when you got let go at Auburn, do you know I was the winningest coach in the history of Auburn University my first 3 years? Not one coach in the history of the school, including today, did what we were able to accomplish, in our first 3 years. My 4th year, I was fired. Do the math.
That's because you didn't beat Alabama.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just kidding.
Enough.
Enough.
But my point is, those are the things that have come in my life where I know I can't survive those things on my own. And I want to say this to you guys. You know, becoming a Christian and really being strong in your faith in what you try to practice happens different to different people, different ways. I know you're going to hear some speakers come up and say, you know, on this day in 1973, I dropped on my knees and I became, you know, a different man. And that's true for some. That's not true for all. That's not true for the guy you're looking at right now. Mine was a process. It was a process of being around the right people. You don't go into the weight room and throw 300 on the bar and bench press it. So that's my analogy. You go into the weight room, you start at 135 when you're a freshman, and then you go to 165, and then you go to 185, and then you put the 2 big plates on the bar, and you're like, man, I'm at 225 now. Y'all remember that, right? I can do this, you know, and that was me. You know, mine wasn't just a revelation, because I can't say I grew up in a broken home and didn't have, I had 2 parents that gave me guidelines, and they gave me parameters, and I had boundaries. And God was a part of our Sundays. What I found when I left was there was more. And I wanted to know what that more was. And a lot of times I wanted to know what that more was because God put me in a world that let it be very clear that I couldn't do it on my own. So where was I going to get the strength from? I can't talk to my wife about the struggles and strife and the things that go with being a college coach and being in the public eye. And, you know, I can talk to her about it, but I can't gain solace from her with her answers she's going to give me. And that's why I said last night, if you're relying on man to fill your hole, you will be disappointed because he can't do it. She can't do it. That's what I've found, and mine is a journey. Mine was not a revelation at one point where I said, man, everything is different. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, and I'm not saying that that's a great thing. I know that happens. But my point to everybody in here, for all you guys who you came this weekend because you wanted to get better at something. You weren't here by accident. You didn't hear Tony Evans by accident. And I'm truly a believer in that. I'm not here by accident. So I want to let you know, all of you in here, that, you know, you're trying to figure out what your role is in your way. Man, it can happen to you differently. But it can't happen to you unless you truly in your heart submit and really want Christ in your heart, in your life, and make a commitment and a dedication to that. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. And you can't sit there and go, I'm not worthy. Because that's Satan telling you you're not. Oh, and let me tell you something now. He'll fight you. And if you let him win, he'll win. And it's real. It's a spiritual warfare that's real. You know, and I could have came here tonight and said, you know what? I'm sitting up there speaking, you know, with Dr. Tony Evans. Man, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a preacher. No, my word's different. It doesn't mean that it's better or it's worse. It's just different. But if the devil really wanted to get in me, he said, well, what are you doing up there speaking with that dude? Look at what you've done, man. You kidding me? You know, you've done this and you've done that. Well, you're not. But that's what it'll do to you, and that's what you really got to turn away. So my long answer to the short question is committing in your heart that you want to be the man that Dr. Evans was talking about, and it's there for everybody. You just got to take it.
Well, I just want to say, Coach, it's a joy to hear about your journey and your story, because we need more Christian college coaches, and not only coaching, but as you guys, when you see him on TV, whether he's coaching or commentating, you pray for him, that he'll stand strong where God has placed him. And thank you for being a man of God and being here with us today. Let's thank Coach Chizik again.
God bless you guys.